Let's try the experiment and see what we get, Black Bum said. He was over his fear, and more curious than before. What ever was wrong with Edgar could be discovered, he thought, and explained. It was probably a nerve distortion of some sort, and would make an interesting case. He and BEA today had discussed the matter with some of their colleagues, Dr. J. E. Stone, Dr. Fred Reardon, Dr. Fred Cartwright, and Dr. George Meredith. They were thinking of forming a committee to investigate the phenomenon, providing Edgar would cooperate. Some of the doctors were present when Blackburn conducted the check reading for Mr. Andrews. When Edgar awakened, Blackburn had the formula for Clara water written down. Sounds like a powerful tonic, he said. Garden sage water is the base. That's what Clara is, garden sage. Then there is a river ambergris, dissolved in grain alcohol. Then some gin and some cinnamon. Edgar shook his head. Lord, what a docile, he said. It won't hurt him, Black BM said. The other doctors nodded. They were interested. We'll send this to Mr. Andrews, and get his report on its effect, Blackburn said. I'll mix some up too. If it's really a good tonic, if you can go to sleep and toss off things like that, then we want to find out all we can about it. We'll investigate it thoroughly and let you know whether you belong in a circus or an institution, boys? They laughed, and Edgar laughed with them. Whatever happened now, he was being looked after by the right kind of people. They would not allow him to harm others through the readings, and they would not allow the thing, whatever it was, to harm him. They would find out what it was and what should be done with it. He visited Lane several times at the Southern School of Osteopathy. He HK'd the man. And now that the fear of doing something wrong had passed, he enjoyed talking with him. Lane was interested when he heard that the doctors were going to conduct an investigation. He suggested an experiment of his own. We have cases from the clinic which we have to diagnose, he said. The professors know what is wrong with these persons. They check on our knowledge by asking us what we think. Why couldn't we take readings on some of those cases and see how your diagnosis checks with that of the professors? Edgar was willing. He arranged to come to the school on There Is a River a weekend when Gertrude was in Hopkinsview visiting at the Hill. Lane made preparations. He even confided in some of his fellow students and invited them to attend. The idea backfired. Me had been accorded a year's credit at the school because of his knowledge of anatomy, medicine, and osteopathy, although he had no regular credits for these subjects. The students resented the concession. And when they photM'd out about Edgar, they decided to frame Lane and expose him to Dr. Bland, the head of the school. To carry out their plans, they enlisted the aid of one of their instructors, a medical doctor named Percy Woodall. A group attended the reading on Saturday. Ascertained that Tybee same classroom would be used for the Sunday experiment, and then with Dr. Woodall's help, lured Dr. Bland into an adjoining classroom. Dr. Bland was blind, the result of an accident suffered during his student days, but he dissected corpses skillfully, lectured on anatomy, and made osteopathic diagnoses by running the tips of his fingers over the spine. He was eerily around the school on Sunday, helping the students in their laboratory work and answering questions. The group of conspirators, led by Dr. Woodall, encountered him in the hall and began asking about a certain case. Dr. Woodall asked him to go into the lecture room to expand on the subject. Then one of the students opened the door leading to the room where Edgar was giving the reading. He had just begun and was speaking in a clear, loud voice. Lane sat beside him. He did not notice when the door behind him opened. Dr. Bland, irritated by the interrupting voice, stopped to listen to it. "Who is that in the next room lecturing on anatomy?" he asked. "There is a river," the students said they didn't know. "I want to hear him," Dr. Bland said. "Take me in there, Dr. Woodall." They led him in and placed him beside Lane, who turned white at the sight of him. He could not stop Edgar, he knew. The reading, a diagnosis of one of the school's clinic cases, continued. Dr. Bland waited until Edgar said, "Ready for questions." Then he asked one. There was no answer. "Why doesn't he answer me?" the doctor said. "Who is this man?" Lane repeated the question. Edgar answered it. "Who is the other man?" Dr. Bland asked. "Why doesn't he answer me instead of him?" Miserably, Lane made the suggestion that Edgar wake up. Then he tried to explain things. Dr. Bland listened. When Edgar was awake, he questioned him about his education and medical training. "What Mr. Lane says is right," Edgar said. "I've never been to medical school. I never got further than GRMR school." "Ridiculous," Dr. Bland said. "That was a perfect diagnosis. I know the patient. Furthermore, your anatomy is flawless. Tell me about this business." The students who had engineered the frame-up disappeared. Dr. Woodall and Dr. Bland heard the story to its end. Getting up to go, Dr. Bland readied for Edgar's hand and shook it. "Come and see us again," he said. "This is very interesting. What a marvelous brain yours would be to dissect." Edgar decided not to visit Lane again. There is a river. He was busy with a new idea. Working in a bookstore, he had discovered, was less interesting than taking pictures. Moreover, he didn't like being separated from Gertrude all day, especially when she had no home to keep, and found time heavy on her hands. If he opened a photographic studio of his own, she could be with him all day and help him a great deal. Aheady, he had a prospective partner, Frank J. Potter, a distant cousin of Lucian Potter, who owned the bookstore. Frank was assistant county clerk, a tall, blond, handsome young man. He was anxious to learn photography and get away from marriage licenses and birth certificates. "You two know everyone in town between you," John Blackburn said. "Why don't you buy out Harry Cook's studio over on College Street? I'd even let you take my picture." "A beard like that should only be painted," Frank said. They were standing in front of the bookstore, soaking up the September sunlight. The mailman came by and handed Edgar a letter. It was from Mr. Andrews, in New York. He had received a letter from a man in Paris, France. The man had read Mr. Andrews's advertisement for Clara water in a medical journal, and was writing to say that he knew it was unavailable, because his father had been its manufacturer. It had not been made or sold now for many years. However, the son had the formula, and would gladly give it to Mr. Andrews, so that he could make the tonic himself. A copy of the prescription was enclosed. It was identical with the one given by Edgar in his reading. Mr. Andrews was taking the mixture, and feeling better. Edgar read the letter to Blackburn. The doctor stroked his black beard. "Reckon we'd better begin those experiments," he said. "Well, Blackburn, you'll have to be Case's Jesus tonight. He's dead." John Blackburn stood in the doorway of the studio dressing room, taking in the scene before him. On a sofa, in a position similar to the one he usually ashened while giving a reading, lay Edgar. He seemed lifeless. Blood had clotted on his lips. Around him stood half a dozen doctors. Two of them, Stone and Reardon, were members of the investigating group. It was one of the others who had spoken. Blackburn approached the sofa and looked down at the body. "What happened, he asked. A doctor named McCracken answered him. "He was like this when I got here. Tom Barnes and Frank Porter came and got me. They said he slumped over and passed out while he was sitting by the stove." Barnes and Porter, two boys who worked in the studio, spoke up from the edge of the group. "There is a river he was working all day over at the furniture factory," Barnes said. "He was taking pictures for the factory catalogue. It was cold over there," Porter said. "There was no heat. When he got here about 6 o'clock he was nearly frozen. He went into the darkroom for a while," Barnes said, "but it was cold there too, so he came out and sat by the stove. Pretty soon he just slid over the chair and fell on the floor. We carried him to the sofa and went to get a doctor," Porter said. "After Dr. McCracken couldn't wake him up, we got the rest of you." "What did you do?" Blackburn said to McCracken. "I tried to pour whiskey down his throat, but his jaws were locked. I pried them open. That's where the blood came from. A couple of the lower front teeth broke. I put a damp cloth in his mouth and gave him an injection of morphine. I couldn't detect any pulse." One of the other doctors spoke up. "I gave him an injection of strychnine." Another said, "I gave him some more morphine. They had put hot bricks, wrapped in towels, against his body, and placed hot stove lids against the soles of his feet. Still there had been no sign of life." Stone and Reardon said that all this had been done before they arrived. They were of the opinion that Edgar had fallen by accident into the land of sleep he assumed when giving a reading. They thought nothing should have been done until Blackburn arrived, on the chance that he might be able to break the trance by suggestion. "The stuff that's in him would kill him even if he had been all right to start with," one of the doctors said. "What are you going to do, Blackburn?" Black JCBUR sat down by the sofa and began to talk to There Is a River Edgar. He suggested that his pulse increase, that his blood circulate normally, that he wake up. Over and over he repeated the admonitions. Nothing happened. One by one the other doctors left. He's done for, one of them said. If I ever saw a dead man, he's it. Worked himself to death, another said. Ever since he and Frank Potter bought this place, he's been at it day and night. Imagine, working all New Year's Day taking pictures. In a cold, deserted factory. How about the other stuff? His colleague said. Black bum, and the boys have been putting him through all sorts of stunts for over a year. You can't tell me that sort of thing isn't deleterious. The other nodded. Nice fellow, he said. Very good photographer, from what I hear. Wonder what it was that affected his mind like that. They say he knew all sorts of things when he was asleep. I don't know, but whatever it was, it's killed him. Reckon. He wasn't a fake, anyhow. Back in the studio, Blackburn continued talking. After half an hour, when A.U. but Stone and Reardon of the others had gone, one of Edgar's muscles twitched. His pulse became detectable, his breathing became noticeable. With a deep groan, he woke up. Pain racked his body. His mouth was full of blood, some of his teeth were gone. The soles of his feet were blistered. His arms were so sore from the hypodermic injections that he could scarcely move them. Blackburn told him what had happened and asked him what to do. I don't know, he answered. Let me go back to sleep and see if you can talk it out of me. He put himself to sleep and Blackburn began to talk again. There is a river, he suggested, that normal conditions return to all parts of the body, that healing of the sore spots be speeded and pain be removed, and that whatever poisons were already in the system be thrown off. He had noticed that where the hypodermics had been administered, the flesh of the arms was discolored and swollen. The doses had not yet been absorbed. He tried injecting a needle and withdrawing the plunger. Most of the stuff came out. Now an hour passed. The pulse again receded. There was no sign of life. Stone and Reardon left. He's done for, they said to Blackburn. Another hour passed. A muscle twitched. Again the pulse became detectable. Breathing became noticeable. Again. Edgar woke up. I feel better, he said. I think I'm all right. Most of the pain had gone, but he was sore from head to foot. His feet were so swollen he could not tie the laces of his shoes. Blackburn bindled him up and drove him home in his buggy. Fine way to start the year 1906, Blackbism said. What happened to you? Edgar said he didn't know. I was tired and cold, and I hadn't stopped to eat much. I was sitting by the stove, getting warm, and that's AUI. Remember. I wonder, Blackburn said, if that crazy mind of yours didn't put you to sleep because you needed rest. It looks after other people's health when we ask it to. WD shouldn't it look after yours? If it's going to do tricks like that, I wish it would tell me, so I can go to bed and not have all the doctors in town trying to wake me up, Edgar said. Is Gertrude back from Hopkinsville yet? Blackburn asked. There is a river, no, Edgar said. She decided to stay for New Year's, and I'm glad of it. She'd have lost 10 years of her life if she'd seen this thing tonight. What will she say when she finds my teeth missing? We'll tell her you got them knocked out in a saloon fight, Blackburn said reassuringly. I'd better stay with you. Tonight. I don't want anything else to happen to you, What you've been through. They let themselves in and went to bed. In the morning, Edgar was awakened by the sound of the front doorbell. A messenger boy handed him a large floral piece. The card, edged in black, began, with deepest sympathy. The Blackburn brothers, Beasley, and Reardon were all members of a local organization known as the EQB Lita Airy Club. Casually, without formal organization for any particular scientific purpose, they began to observe Edgar's readings, intending to record their evidence in the club's files. They were well aware of the attitude of their profs. Scion toward shenanigans of that sort, but they were familiar with such American books as Thompson J. Hudson's The Law of Psychic Phenomena and knew something about the studies of clairvoyance and somnambulism that had been going on in Einrope for more than a century. In the 18th century, before the discoveries of Ms. Murr and de Puysegur, a pioneer named Maxwell said, "There is no disease which is not curable by a spirit of life, without help of a physician. The universal remedy is nothing but the spirit of life increased in a suitable subject." Mesmer found a means of stimulating this natural healing force and called the process magnetism. In 1784 de Puysegur, attempting to magnetize Victor, the shepherd Bhy, there is a river, discovered hypnotism. Victor, falling into a deep trance, began to speak. D diagnosed the ailment of the person next to him. During the next generation, persons with similar sensitivity were formed in France, Germany, and England. They were studied carefully. The best men of science gave them their attention and wrote books about them. Somnambusm became fashionable. People went by preference to a somnambulist rather than to a physician, and results apparently were as efficacious as they were amazing. The somnambulists seemed infallible in diagnosis, and the remedies they suggested were simple and, according to the evidence, helpful. It is not surprising, of course, that people in that time preferred a clairvoyant to a doctor. The medical profession was in a state of dark ignorance. Montaigne, the French essayist, when threatened with a physician, begged that he be allowed to recover his strength, that he might better resist the attack. Somnambulists, on the other hand, seldom prescribed anything violent. D frequently stated that the trouble was psychological and could be corrected by suggestion. The material on somnambulism that was gathered and printed to ± the first half of the 19th century would seem to be overwhelming proof of the reality of the Phe nom non. Carl Duprel, discussing the subject in the Philos Arphy of Mysticism, quoted a score of authors, and predicted that one of them, Dr. Justinus Kemmer, would be among the most read in the next century. Dr. Kemmer wrote about Frau Horf, the Siris of Prevorst, a somnambulist so sensitive that upon approaching a patient, and even before contact, but still more after it, she at once experienced the same feeling and in die-heek place as the patient, and to the great astonishment of the latter, could exactly describe all his there is a river sufferings, without his having given her any previous verbal information. Many somnambulists experienced this transference of the patient's TNTOMs to themselves. They were termed sensitive. Odious, particularly those who went into deep trance, on awakening neither knew what they had said nor felt any ill effects. These were called intuitive. The sensitive type suffered constantly, picking up the pains of those about them, and were in danger of temporary blindness, melancholia, and almost anything else that the person examined was enduring. The intuitive somnambulist, on the other hand, had a rather easy time of it. He went to sleep, woke up, and his work was done. Many experiments were conducted to prove that in this state of trance the entire mechanism of normal physical life retreated beyond reach. A somnambulist would be given something to eat, such as an apple. He would then be put into a trance, and while in that condition be given a different food to eat, perhaps a piece of pastry. He would eat the pastry, relish it, and describe the taste. Yet on awakening the only taste in his mouth would be that of the apple. Once a woman somnambulist was kept in a trance for 6 months, during which time her place of habitation was changed. She accustomed herself to the new house, and lived in it, cooking and cleaning and entertaining. Yet when she was awakened finally the place was strange to her and she could not find her way around from room to room. As the books on somnambulism rolled off the presses, orthodox medicine rallied to the opposition. Mesmer was condemned as a fraud, and the diverse phenomena discovered by other investigators were damned along with him. The hope for a new system of diagnosing physical ills, a system already inherent in man and magically sure, began to fade. Here is Duprel's report of one of their investigations. There is a river when in the year 1831 the Professional Commission, which had been engaged in its investigation since its appointment several years before, caused its report confirming all the substantial phenomena attributed to somnambulism, to be read in the Medical Academy of Paris. The deep silence of the assembly betrayed the disturbance of their minds. Then, when as usual it was proposed that this report should be printed, an academician, Castel, rose and protested against the printing of it, because if the facts reported were true, half of our physiological science would be destroyed. 75 years later somnambulism was all but forgotten. Orthodox medicine was on the verge of a great era. Thus when the Blackburn brothers and their colleagues took up the study of the intuitive somnambulist Edgar Cayce, they approached him with the same skepticism which had prevailed in their profession a century before. They tried him with same tests, and they got the same results. He was asked to give a reading for the mother of a local dentist. She lived in a nearby town. The name and the address were read to him after he had gone to sleep. He diagnosed her ailment and outlined a system of treatment. He then was asked to describe the room in which the woman lay. He told what color the walls were painted, what pictures were on them, where the windows were located, and where the bed was situated. He located the origin of the steel in the bed springs, mentioned where the cotton in the mattress had been grown, and listed the cities in which the various sections of the bed had been manufactured. The doctors checked the information as far as they could. The description of the room was correct in every detail. They were, however, able to trace the steel, the cotton, and the wood of the bed. A Tennessee woman who was unable to get relief for her there is a river illness volunteered as a patient she had, he said, a lacera tie-on of the stomach. Edgar told her to disregard the doctors. Each morning she was to take a lemon, roll it, cut it in half, and eat one of the halves. She was then to walk as far as she could, rest, walk home, sprinkle salt on the other half of the lemon, eat it, then immediately drink at least 2 glasses of water. The doctors thought it was a joke. The woman decided to follow the suggestion. In a few weeks, she reported that she was feeling fine, could walk several miles, and found her food agreeing with her. There were other readings, but they had an irritating habit of turning out in the same way, correct. A Bowling Green man wrote to an acquaintance in New York, describing Edgar's powers. The man said the whole thing was a fraud. As an experiment, a reading was taken on him one morning. Edgar was told to find him in New York and to trace his progress through the streets as he approached his office BCE. Edgar trailed him to a cigar store, then to his office BCE, read part of his mail, and reported on a portion of a telephone conversation. The text of the reading was immediately telegraphed to the man. He wired back, "You are exactly right. I am coming to Bowling Green." He did come, and tried to induce Edgar to go back with him to New York. They would, he said, make $1 million. Edgar refused. In the autumn of 1906, the EQB Literary Club chose hypnotism for the subject of one of its monthly Derma meetings. By way of demonstration, Edgar was invited to give a reading. Most of the local doctors were to be at the Derma, and many physicians from surrounding localities. In order to be ready for the reading, Edgar ate early, at home. Black Bum called for him. Gertrude, nervous and frightened, demanded a promise of Blackburn. "Promise me you won't try any tricks with him while he is asleep," she said. "I don't want any pins stuck in him or there is a river any monkey business like that. I want him brought back in as good condition as he is going. Till take care of him," Blackburn promised. At the meeting, Edgar went to sleep on a couch that was brought in and placed before the dais. He was given the name and address of a college student who was in a dormitory just outside the city. The boy was a patient of one of the doctors present. "Yes, we have the body," he said. "He is recovering from an attack of typhoid fever. The pulse is 96, the temperature 101.4. The doctor in charge of the patient said the diagnosis was correct. A committee of 3 was dispatched to check on temperature and pulse. While they were gone, an Men arose as to what state of consciousness or unconscious ness Edgar was in. Some said hypnosis, some said trance, some said a dream state. The doctors who were witnessing their first reading wanted to find out. Over Blackbum's violent protests, one of them stuck a needle in Edgar's arms, hands, and feet. There was no response. Another left the room, returned with a hatpin, and before Blackburn could stop him, dirust it entirely through Edgar's cheeks. Still there was no response. His hardened to all of that, one of the other doctors said. This one opened a penknife and ran the blade under Edgar's left forefinger. Slowly the nail was lifted away from the FLECB. There was no indication of pain, no blood flowed. The knife was withdrawn. Suddenly Edgar woke up. Immediately he felt pain. The doctors began to apologize. Just a few scientific tests, they said. No harm was meant. Edgar lost his temper. He turned on Blackburn and the other doctors. There is a river TM through, he said. TVE let you do anything you wanted to do with me. TVE given you my time and never asked that you even be polite enough to think me sincere. I thought you wanted to find out the truth. But you don't. Nothing will convince you. Nothing will convince any of you. No matter how many miracles you see, you will never believe anything that will interfere with your smugness. You take it for granted that every man in the world is crooked except yourselves, and you will accept no proof of anyone's honesty. I'll never try to prove anything to any one of you again. I'll never give another reading unless it's for someone who needs help and believes I can give it to him. He walked out. The nail of Edgar's little finger never grew normally again. All that winter it festered and was sore, reminding him of the knife that had tried to find his secret by probing his flesh. There would be no more of that now. The EQB Literary Club's investigating committee had ceased to tie-on. But the inquisitors of his conscience remained. And their questions hurt him more than anything that had been done on the night of the dinner. Was this strange gift a virtue or a vice? Basically it had only one frightening aspect. It could not be explained, it could not be understood. Should it be used, or should it not be used? Would it be a blight to his children, or would it end, as it had begun, with himself, a strange and errant strand of fate, reaching out to strangle his peace and happiness? Edgar had fled from the scientists, but he could not flee from himself. It was never a comfortable feeling to know there is a river, that a force beyond the knowledge of man was coursing through him, waiting to be tapped, like an underground stream that roars beneath a quiet country field. But beyond this there was a larger disturbance, a cloud that formed, often into a storm of fear, driving all other thoughts to cover. Now he faced it at every turn. What if he should pass on to a son or a daughter this wild ability of the mind? Gertrude had the same fear, but her love for the exterior. Edgar, the friendly, wide-awake young man to whom she had given her heart, was so great that she defied whatever lay within him to intrude on the sanctity of their love. Happy Smiley he had in those months a proud, uplifted look, and her eyes dared any but the friends of heaven to walk with her while she waited for the spring. In November of 1906, the Casey Studio on College Street held an art exhibit. A collection of paintings, carbon, prints, and watercolors valued at $40,000 was taken on consignment from one Franz von Hanfstaengl, an art dealer of New York. The show was well attended, and so many carbon prints and watercolors were sold that the remainder was kept for the Christmas season when the show closed and the paintings were returned to New York. Boozy Ness was so good that Edgar was sure he would be able by spring to start building the house he and Gertrude were planning. On December 23, the College Street studio was destroyed by fire. None of the pictures saved. Edgar, reading over his insurance policies, discovered that none of them covered goods on consignment. Von Hanfstaengl's HSTS showed that the value of the merchandise which had not been returned to him was $8,000. Edgar was broke. The studio was in debt. Business went on in the State Street studio, and was there is a river better than ever. Edgar worked every day and almost every night, taking only Sunday mornings off to teach his Sunday school class. His only vacation came on the afternoon of March 16, 1907. He stayed at home after lunch that day, pacing up and down the living room of the little cottage on Park Avenue where he and Gertrude now lived, smoking innumerable cigarettes. Now and then Mrs. Evans, who was visiting them, came out of the bedroom to tell him something. Once the nurse, Daisy Dean, emerged and stared at him coldly. Finally Blackburn came out, smiling. "Did you hear him?" he said. He let out a pretty good squawk. Edgar gulped. "It's a boy?" he asked. He felt foolish. "A son is the technical phrase," Blackburn said. "Healthy as a wildcat, and Gertrude is fine." Mrs. Evans opened the bedroom door and called to them. £9.50, she said. Edgar sat down. "I didn't mean any harm," he said weakly. "I didn't know. It was like this, so much pain and suffering for Gertrude. Why was I let off so easily?" Blackburn restrained a smile. "You've suffered," he said. "And from now on you can worry. There's another mouth to feed." "I'd like a dozen, but not this way," Edgar said. "Let's take a reading and find out how to get them some other way," Blackburn suggested. He went back into the bedroom. Mrs. Evans came out with the baby. "Isn't he beautiful?" she said. "Yes," Edgar said, but he didn't think so. Privately he asked Blackburn if all babies looked like skinned rabbits. Blackburn nodded glmnly. "Even Cleopatra was like that," he said, "when she was bomb. He'll grow out of it. There is a river they named him Hugh Lynn, after Gertrude's two broth. Mrs. Evans stayed to look after him until Gertrude was recovered. She declared him to be an angel. All that spring and summer the angel cried. He didn't even stop when the second fire came, in September. It wrecked the State Street studio, but this time there were no goods on consignment, and the insurance adjusters were inclined to be generous. "You've had hard luck, Casey," one of them said. "Just Tell us the amount and we won't bother checking it. You'll get the money. Edgar put carpenters to work immediately, and in 2 weeks was open for business again. Then his partner got frightened and threw the firm into bankruptcy. Frank Potter, the original partner, had sold his interest to Edgar, and had been replaced by Lynn, Gertrude's brother, and Joe Adcock. It was Adcock who initiated bankruptcy, though none of the creditors was worried. The studio was closed for 7 minutes while the formalities were staged. Then it opened again. There were more customers than ever. Because she had been named as Edgar's chief creditor in the bankruptcy proceedings, Carrie Salter was called to Bowling Green. She came with her husband, Dr. Thomas Burhouse, of Springfield, Tennessee. Edgar, can you imagine me marrying not one doctor, but 2, she said. He's not only a medical doctor, but an osteopath. Dr. House was a genial, medium-sized man with handle-bar mustaches and brown eyes that twinkled and betrayed him when he tried to tease someone. He liked Bowling Green. It woxill'd be a nice place to spend the winter, he thought, before opening an office in Hopkinsville in the spring. There is a river you're supposed to run the studio, he told Carrie. We can't leave. I'll stay with Gertrude so Lizzie can go home, Carrie said. You run the studio. I don't know anything about it. Edgar knows what he's doing anyhow. I'll help him, Dr. House said. Thereafter he passed the days in the studio, smoking cigars, watching Edgar take pictures, and talking to the doctors who, out of long habit, stopped in to visit with Edgar and each other. He paid no attention to the business, nor to the talk he heard about the readings. Very interesting was all he ever said. He was intent on a vacation, and he was determined that nothing was going to interrupt it. Edgar forgot everything but work. He wanted to pay off his debts and be a free man again. He also wanted to leave Bowling Green. The 2 fires and the bitter experience with the doctors had spoiled his love for the place. He wanted to get away and make a fresh start. Gertrude agreed with him.